Hello and welcome to the first episode of a new podcast, Local Legends. I'm your host, Emily Wollenberg, and on this podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the spookiest stories and legends local to my home state, Arkansas. This week's episode will also feature special guests Carly Ferris and Grace Carey. The story I'm going to tell you is true and is about one of the oldest and creepiest places in Arkansas, the Crescent Hotel. Disclaimer: some of the material discussed in this podcast is graphic and may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. If you've ever seen the 2016 psychological thriller, A Cure for Wellness, you might have been horrified by the dark and disturbing medical treatment patients endured behind the doors of a beautiful resort in the Swiss Alps. But unknown to many, a real-life version of this movie was happening a century ago in a hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Built in 1886, the Crescent Hotel, which overlooks the Ozark Mountains, has been branded the symbol of hospitality in Arkansas. Its 15 acres of manicured gardens, upscale suites, and luxury spa make it an ideal destination for a traveler. But in the 1930s, the hotel had a group of guests who met a terrible fate that locals say still haunt the place to this day. In 1937, a former vaudeville magician named Norman Baker arrived in Eureka Springs. But this was no ordinary man. Baker had left behind a trail of mistakes that were quickly catching up to him, and coming to Arkansas would be a fresh start. He had an idea to renovate an old hotel into a front for his most recent scam. He claimed he had found a cure for cancer, and so the Crescent Hotel became Baker's Cancer Curable Hospital. Baker had gone into business with a doctor named Charles Ozias, who had supposedly discovered this cure. He and Baker advertised their miracle concoction to patients with cancer. Baker sent 5 sick volunteers to be administered Ozias' treatment. All 5 patients died. However, Baker published in his magazine, called The Naked Truth, that all 5 patients survived. The cure patients had been receiving was just a useless concoction of alcohol, glycerin, carbolic acid, watermelon seed tea, brown corn silk, and clover leaves. When Baker started treating patients in the former Crescent Hotel, visitors were still unaware of his scam. It's reported that the Baker Hospital made over $500,000 a year from its patients. Many people died within the walls of the Crescent Hotel, while Baker deprived them of potential life-saving treatment from real medical professionals. John Tunis, husband of one of Baker's victims, said his wife would be stuck with 6 or 7 needles a day until the medicine ran out. After battling lawsuits with the American Medical Association and multiple federal investigations, Baker was finally found guilty of his hoax in 1940. He served only 4 years in prison and paid a fine of $4,000. Hospital artifacts, such as Baker's autopsy table and walk-in cooler where he kept the bodies of his victims, still exist in the Crescent Hotel's basement. The morgue is said to be one of the most haunted parts of the hotel, where visitors have reported feeling a sudden chill, seeing apparitions, or feeling hands touch them in the darkness. The Crescent Hotel's dark history offers intrigue and mystery for guests who can choose to stay in one of the rooms, take a tour of the more haunted areas, or investigate for themselves if it truly is a place for paranormal activity. In the end, it's possible the souls of Baker's victims are still trying to tell their stories. For our next segment, I'm excited to have with us an Arkansas native, Carly Ferris, who is here to share one of her own personal scary stories that she experienced in the college town of Russellville, Arkansas. Carly, thank you for being on the show. I'm excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here, thanks.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us your story?
This story happened my freshman year of college. My friend from high school and I had moved in together into this dorm, and I learned when I moved in that it was like one of the oldest dorms on campus at Tech. It was built in the 30s, and actually later I found out that it wasn't built to be a dorm. It was actually built to house military equipment in the ground floor, and then there were like military barracks in the second floor, and that's where I lived. So this story happened the first night that my friend and I had moved into this dorm. My parents had left. They had helped us move in. I wrapped myself in a towel and I was about to go take a shower, and there were like communal showers, so I had to like sort of walk down the hallway and open the door. And what happened was I walked down the hallway and I opened the door to the bathroom, and then on my right side, sort of out of my peripheral vision, I saw this like this sounds crazy, but I saw this like big sort of like hulking figure. It was like a misty black figure. It was like as tall as the ceiling, and it was like sort of hunched over. And it was like only for a second, but it was like one of those things where I knew I saw it because like the image was sort of burned into my brain like right after. And I just kind of had to take a second to sort of calm down. And then I went and I took my shower and I freaked out a little bit. And then I went back to my room and I didn't tell my roommate because she didn't really like ghost stories or stuff like that. And I didn't want to scare her because we had to live there for the next year. So I just didn't say anything. So after I got back from my shower, she wanted to go take her shower, so she got in a towel and she walked down the hallway to go take her shower. And then like 2 minutes later or something, this is the thing that's scary. She came back to our room and she was like, "Carly, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to sound crazy, but I have to just tell you what I just saw." And what she told me and what she described was actually exactly what I saw. A sort of big, tall, hulking figure out of her peripheral that went away when she looked right at it. So we were kind of scared of that for the rest of the year. There it is.
Wow, that is really intense.
Yeah.
Especially because what she saw mirrored yours exactly, even though she didn't have any reference of what you saw to go off of. She just had the same experience in that short amount of time after you did.
Yeah. It was really, really creepy. Especially since she's not really like a ghost story type of person. Like she doesn't really like that kind of stuff. So it was like really validating for her to see the same thing that I saw, that I didn't just make it up in my head.
Definitely. What dorm was that in?
That was in Hughes Hall at Arkansas Tech.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Carly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. It was fun.
For our final segment, I'll be bringing on our next guest for a little guessing game of creepy stories. For our next segment, I want to welcome our second guest, another resident scary story lover from Arkansas, Grace Carey. Grace, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm so excited.
Now, you've actually stayed at the Crescent Hotel, which is the subject of our first segment, haven't you?
Yes, we stayed together.
That's correct, we did indeed. And would you say that it lives up to its legacy of being pretty spooky?
Oh, 100%. There were some freaky things that happened.
Well, there you have it. We have a first-person witness admitting to experiencing something creepy at the Crescent Hotel. Now, because of time, we'll have to save that story for another day, but maybe we'll have Grace back for a future episode. So this next segment is called Two Truths, One Lie. And how this segment is going to work is I'm going to read you 3 short spooky stories, and you're going to try to guess which one of the stories is fake.
Ooh.
So 2 of these stories are in local archives as legends, and 1 I have just completely made up. So you have to guess which one you think is that made-up story. Are you ready?
Yes!
Okay, then let's jump right in. Our first story takes place in a building most Arkansans know well. If they haven't seen it in person, they've seen it on postcards. The Arkansas State Capitol Building is known for its beauty and likeness to the National Capitol Building in Washington, D.C. However, underneath its beauty lies a dark history of how it came to be. The building was constructed on the site of the state penitentiary in 1899, and the prisoners were the primary source of the labor. During its construction, legend says that coffins filled with skeletons of prisoners were found under the foundation. But perhaps one of the most horrifying stories of the Capitol's history took place in 1932. A state representative was going to work at the Capitol as if it had been any other day. But unfortunately, this day resulted in his untimely demise, as he was crushed to death by the Capitol's south elevator. To this day, people say the elevator acts oddly. It often will go past the selected floors or stop at several floors where no one has pushed the button. Visitors have also claimed to hear ominous moans or footsteps in the basement of the Capitol building. Are these strange occurrences a result of faulty wiring or paranormal activity?
Dun, dun, dun.
This next one comes from a place that we know well because many of our friends attend here for college, Arkansas Tech University. Arkansas Tech was started in 1910 and was just a few buildings at the time. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, the government provided jobs by constructing new buildings on college campuses. Caraway Hall was built during this time as a girls' dormitory, which it remains today. According to campus lore, a girl named Gracie was living in Caraway Hall in the 1950s. She was experiencing some hardships in her life and had gone into a deep depression. One night, Gracie decided to take her own life. According to one source, she hung herself outside the front door of Caraway Hall and was found dead, dangling over the doorway. Ever since, students have reported seeing or hearing Gracie walk the halls of the dormitory during the night. A few years ago, a girl was found staring at a wall in the dorm, but not saying anything. A resident assistant asked her what she was doing, and she replied, "I'm talking to Gracie."
That's so spooky.
This last story hits very close to home as it takes place at a university in our hometown of Clarksville, Arkansas, the University of the Ozarks. Founded in 1834, the University of the Ozarks is the oldest university in the state of Arkansas. With only about 900 students, it's a very small university. However, this college has some legends that seem larger than life. When the College Street apartments were built on campus in the 1980s, they became a popular living space for students. According to campus lore, one resident liked living on the second floor of the apartments because he could see his favorite soccer team practice from his bedroom window. One night, he heard a strange noise coming from outside, so he got up to investigate. But when he looked out his window, he stopped dead in his tracks as he saw a dark figure standing motionless outside in the middle of the soccer fields. He started inching away from the window, unsure of what to do, but as soon as he made a movement, the figure started running toward him at an unhuman-like speed. The resident shut his window, closed the curtain, and locked his door. Legend has it, he was so traumatized by this experience, he moved out of the apartment the next day and was never seen again.
Oh, what a turn.
So, Grace, now it's your time to make a decision. Which of these stories do you think is fake?
They all have aspects that are very fishy, so this is kind of hard because I thought I knew, like after the second one, I was like, oh, okay, I got this, I know, and now I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm gonna say that the dark figure at the University of Ozarks is the fake one.
You are correct! Congratulations!
Ding, ding, ding! I'm a winner!
Yes, that story was completely made up by me.
But what a good story.
Thank you very much. All of the stories are pretty unsettling, so I think it would be hard to discern which is true and which is fake. And I don't have any evidence that any of the other ones are actually true, but I do have many sources saying these are urban legends of these areas.
Huh, that's cool. Very spooky.
Well, Grace, it's been an honor having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for participating in 2 Truths, 1 Lie, and congratulations on your victory today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It has been so much fun.
Thanks for listening to Local Legends. We'll be back next week with another episode. Local Legends is created, scripted, and produced by Emily Wollenberg.